Hello, my name is Kale, and welcome to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, this is not normally the content I make, but I think content I would like to make, at least try and give it a whirl. But I'd like to go over all the books that I read in 2024. And I read over 160, so there's a lot of them. You might need to buckle up and hold on tight. If you're only interested in a certain section of the video, I'm going to go ahead and put timestamps in the description so that you can easily navigate where in the video you'd like to go. We're going to start off by talking about some of my goals for the year and whether or not I hit those goals. First off, my first goal was to read 100 books. I read 160 books, so I think I'm good. Next was my page goal. I had a goal to read 50,000 pages, and see, that goal doesn't seem that bonkers to me at the concept of reading 100 books, but then I kind of played myself because I read a lot of manga this year. Like a lot of manga this year. So that goal was actually really hard to hit. I just wanted to be noted that I did hit the goal. We read 50,294 pages in 2024. I just ramble a lot and then forget to give you the total number, so take this still frame of me being a rambler. And I was reading up until the last, 4 hours of the end of the year. My longest reading streak was 176 days. My goal was to read at least 30 pages. I think for a while in the year it was 50 pages, but that felt a little too heavy for me, so I swapped it to 30 pages, and that felt a lot more doable. My current streak is 67 days. I wish that I could have said I ended the year on 69, but we're here now. I'm going to break my reading list into 3 categories. We're going to talk about nonfiction books, then we're going to talk about manga, and then we're going to talk about novels and regular books. My nonfiction category is abysmal. I have a whopping 2 books, which I think has really indicated I'd like to increase that number in 2025. I even have a couple nonfiction things on my TBR that I think I'd like to move to the forefront. In every other category, I'm going to rank my favorites and least favorites, but I read the 20 to 30 something guide to gardening. This was actually really handy because it covers apartment gardening and gardening basics for people that don't know what they're doing, and that's me. So I learned a lot from this book. The other nonfiction book I read was Disability Visibility. It was a series of essays, thoughts from disabled people about their lived experience, the ableism they face. Maybe it was about a specific experience in their life or event, and kind of basically how they both worked through that and didn't. And I found this book immensely powerful, and there were several points where I had to put it down and be like, whew, this is uncomfortable in a way that I think is important to read, but also uncomfortable. Yeah, highly recommend. Next up, we're going to talk about manga. This is probably not going to be the longest part of the video, but it's definitely the biggest section of books that I read. I read 116 manga total, but that includes I reread 9 of a particular one that I will go through with you in just a second. The first manga of the year I read was Fruits Basket by Natsuki Takaya, probably one of my favorite mangas of all time. I own a couple of the originals, but I finally completed my collector's edition, I think at the end of 2023, so my goal was to go into 2024 being able to read them. They were really good. I didn't like that they removed the author's notes in the margins, because that was one of my favorite parts of the original, was like kind of documenting her experience of what game she's playing and how it's going writing a manga and hearing about her life. And yeah, so missing those parts were kind of sad, but that's okay. There was 12 of these overall, and I don't know if I like them more than the original. I think the original will always have a place in my heart, but I'm glad that I have the collector's edition, and the art is beautiful on the colored pages. Next up, I read Sign of Affection by Sue Morishita. This series is amazing. I don't even know what to say. It's basically about a deaf college student who faces ableism in her daily life and her experiences, and also how she approaches finding a guy really cute and how they want to communicate and experience a relationship together. Sign of Affection is ongoing. It has 10 volumes out, but it's not finished. So if you want to read the first 10, jump into it and do the thing, but know that you're going to be waiting for the rest of the series. I'm so sorry because it's so good. So I get you. I'm with you. It's unfortunate. Next up, I had a reread. It was a bit of a weird one, something I think I read probably in the beginning of high school. It was called Millennium Snow. It's by Bisco Hattori, and that's the same author of Oran Host High School Club, and there are four in that series. I was expecting big things from this because I remember it being so good when I was young. I also remember, I think, only reading the first two and really hoping that the end was good. It wasn't, it was pretty disappointing. So that kind of sucked. But story, sickly girl has a vampire kind of companion who could potentially save her life. And he struggles with the guilt of the concept of stealing her soul and potentially ruining her as a person. It's a very quick read. Next up, I read the first 12 volumes of the Apothecary Diaries. I also watched the available anime. Oh my gosh, this is so good. It's like a historical period piece. There's a lot of heavy topics. These 12 manga were so good. I don't really think any of them missed the mark. I thought the world building was fantastic. The characters are so fun. Mao Mao is such a great main character. Take no shit kind of vibes. And yeah, I'm really excited to see where this goes. There's also a light novel series that is far beyond the manga, so if you want to read the light novels and figure out what's going on with the story, you're welcome to do that. I find the manga so beautiful that I literally refuse to read the light novels. I want to so bad because I want the story so bad, but I will wait to see it drawn because it's just so beautiful and I'm so happy with how they've done it. I'm sad that it's an ongoing series and we only have the first 12, but I will just have to suffer through it because it's worth it. Next up, I read a 24 book series called Hana Kimi. Premise is like American Japanese girl is in love with this like high school, I want to say like volleyball or tennis player or something. Maybe it's badminton. I don't fucking know. And she convinces her parents to let her move to Japan so that she can go to school in Japan and be closer to like her heritage and learn more there. And the reality is, she gender bends and applies for an all boys school so that she can meet her badminton idol. Listen, this series was fine. The premise was cute. It's finished, but it's very like 1990s manga. The words used are problematic in nature. A lot of the concepts are slightly problematic in nature, and I think the discussion around queerness is tropey and pretty awful. I don't really recommend this manga, despite the fact that I read the whole thing. I'm just one of those people that will finish a series. I just can't not know. I've got book FOMO, so I'm kind of disappointed in myself for finishing this series, to be honest. There was a couple particular ones that stuck out as pretty bad. But yeah, read it or don't, up to you. Next up, we have Ascendance of a Bookworm by Suzuka and Miyakuzuki, I believe. This series, it depends. Okay, who did the art depends on what part of the series that you read. Basically, long story short, it's a currently, I think, 4-part series that spans each part is like a different section of this person's life. It's an isekai, which means being reborn into another world. This 20-something-year-old Japanese girl who is obsessed with books, a huge bibliophile, basically experiences an earthquake, gets crushed to death by her books, and wakes up in the body of a sickly 6-year-old who she has her memories, but also her other memories, and all she wants to do is be reborn into a world with books. And in this world, it is a huge leap backwards. It is a fantasy world, and on top of that, she's born into a poor commoner family in a sickly child's body, and she doesn't have access to books. Most of her family doesn't even know what books are, and reading isn't really even a thing. So it's her experience being like, well, if I can't access a book, I'm gonna try and make books. And the way that it goes from there is just amazing. I think every single one of these manga made me cry. They made me feel so much. This was the series that I went ahead and did a 9 book reread for the second part because I had only read the first 7 at the beginning of the year and 2 more had been translated since then. So I went back and reread the second part, number 1 through 7, and then the additional 2. So good, did not disappoint. I need the entire series like right now. The only weird part is it's a light novel series in 4 parts, and basically, I believe 4 different, don't quote me on this, I believe 4 different, like, mangaka decided to pick up each part. And so they were kind of being done at the same time by different people so that the series could be finished. It is still ongoing. I think we're missing 2. And then the English translations for parts 3 and is not finished, and 4 has not even been started. So unfortunately, there's a bit of a wait there, but the Japanese editions are complete from my understanding of Wikipedia. Next up, I read Delicious in Dungeon. There are 14 of these lovely, lovely books. I had so much fun reading this series. I actually read it because it is on Netflix as an anime. Season 1 covers the first half of this 14-book series. I'd say probably the first 7 ish. I would say that they don't specifically have a cutoff of where it switches over, at least not in my brain that I can remember. I want to say that I'm mad that I ruined the anime's ending for myself because this is a completed 14 manga series. I'm not. The manga was so good. I'm not saying that I can't wait to see it animated. Don't get me wrong. And the anime is really good and really fun. But God, there was just something that hit so hard about the manga, especially the second half. It just fucking explodes. This is really a series where you think you're getting into something and it is nothing like what you're actually getting into in the end. And I think the second half really hammers that home. I really cannot wait to see it animated. But I'm glad that I read it. I'm glad I know what happens because fuck, it's so good. The second last series of the year I read was a recommendation from my friend Hannah. It's called Ladies on Top. This was a fun, very 18 plus series about basically a man who's having rough experiences sexually and realizes that he wants to be dominated. And I like the broaching of the topic. I liked how they approached it. I thought it was fun. I thought it was really wholesome, and it was a good commentary on sexual standards in heterosexual relationships. It wasn't one of my top reads of the year, but it was definitely really fun. And I always enjoy a friend's recommendation because then I can kind of like text them as I'm reading. And I had a lot of fun messaging Hannah with this one. And yeah, I enjoyed it, and it opened my eyes to a section of it opened my eyes to a section of manga that I don't typically read, which, you know what, I mean, I appreciate that, and I think I had a good time overall, so it's a good series. For my last manga series of the year, your girl discovered Yuri, which I was like, hold on. Lesbian manga's a thing? I'm in. My last manga of the year was called I'm in Love with the Villainess. There's currently 9 translated volumes out, I want to say. It is an ongoing series. It also has a light novel edition. I did go ahead and read a couple things from the light novel plot synopsis, and I have to say, I think that the series takes a genre turn halfway through, but you know, I don't know. We're not there yet. It's going to take a while before that many are drawn. I also don't know if they're gonna take it in that direction. Anyway, doesn't matter. It was a really fun series. It's an isekai. A girl gets reborn into her favorite video game from her childhood, in which you're supposed to romance 3 princes, but she's a raging lesbian. She wants to romance the villainess instead. So she tries to live her life the way she would have played the game, but instead of aiming for one of the princes, she's really trying to romance the villainess, and that is her experience in this high fantasy world. There is a lot of classism and things like that in this book, and elements of homophobia and homophobic, like queer-centric conversations about, I guess, the like socio-political climate of being queer in this world. It's not like the most intense conversations of all time, but I appreciate how it's approached, and I thought it was overall a really fun series. I really, really liked it, and I'm excited that there's more to read that are potentially going to come out. I hope that they come out as soon as possible because this one's really fun. Okay, so that is 116 manga over me explaining all of the series. Now, my top 3 of the year. Number 1, definitely number 1, was Ascendance of a Bookworm. That series is so fun, so well done. The art is phenomenal. The characters are phenomenal. Again, every single one made me sob. It's so good. Number 2 and number 3 are kind of tied and interchangeable, so in no particular order. The Apothecary Diaries, I really, really liked it. I love a good, like, period piece, and I just thought that I was really in it. I was super sold, and again, phenomenal characters, heavy storyline, but all really worth it. I had a definite couple cries throughout this series as well. And number 3, again, no particular order because 2 and 3 I think are like tied, but Sign of Affection, I really liked it. I took ASL and Deaf Culture Studies in university. It was my minor, and absorbing more like deaf-centric media is really important to me, and seeing deaf character representation is really important in general, especially the fact that they have like a full-time, basically like deaf consultant to help them walk through the signing and how they draw it, how it's approached, ableism and how it's approached, and yeah, how Yuki does things in her everyday life that are honest and accurate to a deaf person's experience. And I think that that is like super amazing, and it was really clear in how the manga portrayed itself. So it's definitely a top one for me. I can't wait for more to come out. In fact, I need more like yesterday. I don't like that all 3 of my top manga this year are manga that aren't finished, because that makes me want to cry, but it's fine. It just means that I'm gonna have to keep keeping on with these 3. My least favorite series, if you couldn't tell, was Hanakimi. I'm so sorry. It just wasn't for me. I think it's outdated and a lot of inappropriate conversation. I think that they did not approach queer conversation at all. Like, it was not well done. So for that, I'm out. Good premise, bad execution. Goodbye. In this next section, we're going to talk about all the novels I read. I need it to be known that some of these are YA novels. I did a lot of rereads this year of some of my favorite series. I was continuing on a reread spree from 2023 into the beginning of 2024. I will explain all as we go, but I would like it to be noted that there are a lot of 18 plus books on this list. If you are not 18, 1, you should not be watching my videos. 2, don't read these books. Go find somebody talking about YA books, because it's not here. There's a couple in here, but no. It was nice to see you. Goodbye. Alright, when it comes to my novels, I read 46 novels, and I did 5 rereads for a total of 51 novels this year. I, in 2023, was doing a reread of all of the Cassandra Clare books. I didn't finish that in 2023, so it carried into 2024. I read City of Lost Souls and City of Heavenly Fire, Tales of the Shadowhunter Academy, The Lost Book of the White, Lady Midnight, Queen of Air and Darkness, Lord of Shadows, and Ghosts of the Shadow Market. There's 8 books from Cassandra Clare this year, all of which carried over from my 2023 reread. All good. Almost all the ones I've read before, Lady Midnight, Queen of Air and Darkness, and wait, those are in the wrong order. Lady Midnight, Lord of Shadows, and Queen of Air and Darkness. That was my first time reading them. I thought they were pretty good. I found the ending to be a little disappointing, but overall, it was a fun series, and I enjoyed it. The rest of those Cassandra Clare books were all rereads for me, just because I was basically reading all 37 of her books in chronological order, not release order, chronological order. If you've never read the Cassandra Clare series that way, I highly recommend it. You can do it in release order, I guess that's fine, but chronologically is so much more fun. Next up, we have a very 18 plus series. There's 5 books, six books. It is called the Wicked Villains series by Katie Roberts. And I'm going to tell you right now, not a lot of plot. The intimacy, very interesting. Basically, each book focuses on a Disney-centric villain and their hero, anti-hero, whatever it might be. And also there's like a focus on like a different kind of kink or variation of sexual experience in each book. I found this series I wasn't really in it for the plot, like I said, but I thought it was a fun and different series. I don't know if it's something I would have picked up on my own. It was a recommendation from a friend. And overall, it was my first experience diving into erotica, and I kind of liked it. It was a cool spin on something that I kind of, something we all know, and maybe that taints Disney for a couple people, but honestly, I was in. I liked it. A little wild, but if you're into erotica, worth a ride, I think. Next up, I read the Plated Prisoner series by Raven Kennedy. There's Gild, Glint, Gleam, Glow, Gold, and Goldfinch. There's 6 books in this series. I would like to formally apologize to Raven Kennedy because I read your first book and I left it this review, and I then was like, well, Mama didn't raise no bitch, so I'm going to read the rest in the series. And at that point, the first 5 had been out. So I pushed through and started reading the second one, and then I went, oh my god, you didn't understand the first book, you dumb bitch. And you can ask my friends, I probably didn't shut up about this for like months, but Gild is really good, and you have to understand that it is literally like a trauma story for it to process in your brain. And once you understand that, which I did not, I was just like, why is this the most depressing book I've ever read? And then it clicked. I was like, oh, Stockholm Syndrome exists. Anyway, it was a me problem. So I suffered through the first book, read 2, 3, 4, 5, and then by the end of 5, I was like, I get it now. Raven, I get it now. I'm so sorry. Anyway, the 6th one came out this year. To finish the series, I decided to do a reread from start to finish so I could have the full experience and give Arin her full story from start to finish, and I'm so glad I did. Haters will say that the 5th book, Gold, is slow and boring. I say you just don't understand art and good storytelling. So, highly recommend this series. It is also very 18 plus. It is a play on the King Midas story in a fantasy world. I think the world building is quite well done. I think the characters are pretty good. I have some issues with a couple side characters. Highly recommend this series. It was so good that I read the first 5 books twice. And I thought the end was pretty well done. If you disagree, that is so fine. But I think it's worth the read for the world that she's created and how she's artistically portrayed it. And how much you're rooting for all the characters, most of them, up until the end. I read too many books by Rick Riordan this year. I basically went through and reread Percy Jackson books because I realized that I never finished the sequel series with the Journey of the Eight or whatever it is. So I read The Lightning Thief, Sea of Monsters, Titan's Curse, Battle of the Labyrinth, and The Last Olympian, which are the first 5 in his original series with Percy Jackson. But then I also kind of was reading them in chronological order, so I was picking pieces and bits to read in between from the Demigod Files, and there was another one, the Demigod Diaries, I want to say. I never finished Demigod Diaries. It was just too boring for me. I think it's the only book I DNF'd this year. But then I went on to read the sequel series that he had written, which was The Lost Hero, Son of Neptune, Mark of Athena, House of Hades, and the Blood of Olympus, me want to say. I also read Percy Jackson's Greek Gods. It's very long, and it's just Greek mythology with notes from Percy and Percy's perspective of Greek mythology. It wasn't the greatest thing in the world, but if you're like looking to get into Greek mythology, it's definitely fun. And if you're already reading Percy Jackson related things, it's even more fun because it's got like a character element to it. So that's my notes, I guess. The next trilogy that I read was Kingdom of the Wicked by Carrie Maniscalco, I want to say is how you say her last name. There's 3 books in this trilogy. It's a trilogy. Kingdom of the Wicked, Kingdom of the Cursed, and Kingdom of the Feared. This series was on my TBR from TikTok, and I don't know how I felt about it in the end. The twists and turns were very interesting, but I'm really upset that it didn't click until the 3rd book what was happening. I think now, knowing what I know, if I went back and read it, I might have a better experience. I think that you, Carrie, I think you took too long to get there, babe. It's hard to explain without ruining the entire series for you. The idea is a young girl and her twin sister are investigating murders of witches in their community in Italy, and basically then main character's sister gets murdered. This is very, like, literally the first chapter, so please don't, it's not a spoiler. And she basically goes on this like Sherlock Holmes style investigation and is willing to do anything and everything to figure out why her sister was murdered. The writing was pretty alright. I thought that the world building was interesting again. I don't think this one was a me problem. You know, with the Raven Kennedy series, I was like, it was me. I was the issue. I don't think I was the issue here, respectfully. Still a good series. I don't know. If I had to sit here, I don't even think I rated it because I was so like scrambled eggs in the brain. So if I had to sit here and rate it, I'd probably give it like a 3 out of 5. It's not unrateable. I just, I don't know about that one. Next up is a trilogy. I only read the first 2. It's the War of Lost Heart series by Carissa Broadbent. Oh my god. I have not shut up about these books in probably like a month to my friends. Premise is like slave girl wants to escape captor and believes that the mages in another country will be able to help her, and the story just evolves so much from there. I would say the first book in the series feels like a piece of music. There is like this beautiful like build, and there's just the right amount of tension, and it's so beautifully written. We have like a badass female main character, a really cool like set of side characters, and the first book really feels like it's building for the second one. I finished the second one about week and a half ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. I can't bring myself to read the third one yet, but the second one was so beautiful and heartbreaking and wonderful. There was so many like, oh my god moment, like, oh my god. I'd say the first 20% dragged like a little bit, but holy shit. The way that the second book the way that this author just like ties these, like, she leaves little questions that you're like, how does this make sense? Like, how does this, I wonder how this works in this world. And she literally answers like everything, any kind of question you could have or confusion about a character. Like, the way that it comes together is so fucking good. I would follow Carissa Broadbent to the ends of the earth. I have realized that she has another series that's out that seems to be quite popular. People don't seem to really know about this one. So I'm definitely going to read anything and everything else that this person writes forever and ever because the writing is so fucking beautiful. But yeah, the War of Lost Hearts trilogy, please go pick it up. The third one is Mother of Death and Dawn, and I will be reading that as probably my first book of 2025. Now I'm going to go into the individual books that I read that weren't necessarily series. We have The Ballads of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. This is basically a villain origin story for President Snow from The Hunger Games. We read this for book club. I don't think it's something I would have picked completely by myself. The story was good. It had a lot of triggering topics: classism, murder of children, the usual for Suzanne Collins. It was good. The ending is interesting. A lot is left up to interpretation, which I hate about books. I'm sorry. I really do. I don't like the whole, like, you decide how it went in the end and what this could possibly mean. Just tie up your loose ends. You tell me what happened. You're the storyteller. So that was like a little disappointing in the end for me. I also don't like how many characters had the word anus in their name. So Suzanne, you and I have a little bit of beef there. I really think we could have, Bob's a nice name. Joe, Frank. Yeah, it was fine. Next up, we have a queer romance. It was called The Romance Recipe by Ruby Barrett. I really liked this book. As somebody who's worked in a kitchen before, I found it very fun. It was kind of giving like a Hallmark romance a little bit, and I liked it, and I would highly recommend it, and it was really cute and really fun. Next up, we have a book by Emma Albin. It's called Don't Want You Like a Best Friend. This was another book club read. It was really cute, really fun, and I really enjoyed the characters. I enjoyed the side characters. I found myself wanting to read more from this author. And again, another book that felt very beautiful, kind of like a piece of music. There was a lot of beautiful build, and then when, certain characters got together, the symphony of their relationship was just so beautiful. I really, really liked this book. I would recommend it to people a million times over. I'm a big fan of, well done queer romances, and I think that this one hit the mark for sure. Next up, I have another queer love story. It's called Bitterthorn by Kat Dunn. I feel horrible because I don't remember this book. Village girl getting not sold off, but basically like given to a local witch as a sacrifice or something like that. I didn't rate it either, so might have to be a reread just to confirm that it existed. I don't know why I don't remember it, because I basically, going through this list, remember at least how I enjoyed and didn't enjoy every book. I couldn't even tell you if I liked this one. I don't know. I just remember it was queer, and there was a woman that was basically sacrificed to a witch, giving Beauty and the Beast, but not really. Sorry, Kat Dunn. I'll give it a try again maybe in another year or two. I've actually re-added it to my TBR because I feel so bad that I don't remember what it was about. And if it's bad, I'll let y'all know. Okay, next up we have a novella. It was called Carving for Kara. It was by Melissa McSherry and Dana Leanne. This wasn't for me. I don't know. I can't remember why I picked it up. I feel like I saw it on TikTok or something like that. It is a Halloween erotica about getting fucked in a pumpkin patch. There's a lot of variety of trigger warnings you should probably read before you read this, but if you're into very kinky Halloween related things, go for it. I don't think I knew what I was getting into, and I finished it and I looked at myself in the mirror and went, what the fuck? Next up should have been in the series list, but I'm doing it as an individual. I read Powerless by Lauren Roberts. It's a trilogy and I only read the first one, and if you know me, you're probably like, wait, fuck, what the fuck? Because I literally will start a series and I refuse to not finish something. So I didn't know that the other two were out. Like, I read Powerless and I was like, oh, I've got to wait for more of these. Interesting. And I don't know why my brain just didn't click that the rest of them are out. But anyway, they're out and very available. The trilogy is complete now. So I think I'll probably reread this in 2024 or 2025. And then read the entire series. I do remember feeling like I had a lot of thoughts about the predictability of the plot in the future. I feel like I'm probably going to be right with some of the things that I thought, but it's basically a girl in a world where people have powers, but she don't have powers, so she's got to fake that she's got powers. It's a little messy, and I had a couple issues with the world building. I'm hoping maybe the other two are better. I'm always down to give a series the full series the benefit of the doubt, because like with the Raven Kennedy series, you could continue to read on to the next book and realize you either didn't get the first one, there was something you were missing, or there was just like pieces that didn't click. I think people are sometimes really quick to read a first book and then go, I'm just disinterested, and then, you know, it's like maybe you didn't give it enough time. No judgment, DNF your books. But next up, I read Something Fabulous by Alexis Hall. This book was cute and fun. The build-up was very interesting. It was another queer romance between two gentlemen. It was also a period piece. There was like the enemies to lovers kind of trope, and it was definitely cute. Drama aspect of the story, there's like some high stakes there, which I think is fun to have a romance story with a little bit of like action style high stakes in, especially as a period piece. I think that's fun. I enjoyed reading this book. The sequel, don't quote me on that, I can't remember what it was called. Something Spectacular, I want to say. Next up, I read A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. I borrowed this from a friend at her recommendation, and it was really good. You know, sometimes with like a murder mystery, whodunit, Sherlock Holmes style book, you're sitting there and you're like, maybe I can figure this out in my brain. You know, I don't know if it's just me that does that, but I really wanted to figure it out, and I definitely did not, and I appreciate that. It was very similar to like Girl on a Train in that aspect, that like I really didn't know where it was going until the end, and then something clicked and I was like, oh fuck. But really good, really well done. A fun, I would say like a fun YA murder mystery whodunit. I wouldn't necessarily call this like a very complex adult whodunit. Yeah, it was still really well done. Apparently there's also a sequel, and now there's like a BBC show about it, so that's pretty cool. Next up, I have The Pairing by Casey McQuiston. So I read this book at the recommendation of two of my best friends. This is the book that took me the longest to read throughout the year. I read this book over 78 days. It was very slow and very dragging on for me. It's a food-centric queer romance with non-binary representation and world travel and really fun side characters and background characters. But I struggled through this one. I really did. I wanted to like it, especially because it was a recommendation of two of my friends. And I don't think I disliked it. I just think with how much it dragged on, part of me wishes I just sat down and powered through it. But I don't know. I think that when a book takes that long to read, there's an indicator of like disinterest. And it's sad because I liked all the characters. I think for me it might have been the writing, which I feel so bad. Casey, I'm sorry. I think also just like all the very specific food talk, there was so many big words. I'm very dyslexic, and it just was a very slow read for me. And yeah, not my fave. Again, great characters, fantastic representation. And if you are like a foodie or into food travel and wine or anything like any of those things, I would recommend this series for you in a heartbeat. You'll probably really like it. Last book that I want to talk about is Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. I read this book a few weeks ago and I was a little disappointed. I feel like I had this expectation of Sanderson's work, and I think I picked the wrong book to start with. I have taken to Blue Sky and been told that this one is a very particular kind of writing style, and it's very different from his usual stuff. Also that like due to who is narrating it kind of changes the aspect of the book. So I don't think Tress of the Emerald Sea was 100% indicative of his other works. It wasn't a bad book. I thought the world building was really fun. A lot of the concepts were really fun. A lot of the characters were interesting. I wouldn't say great. I would say interesting and intriguing. But I struggled to I'll say it. I struggled to feel like this was anything above like a 13 and under chapter book. And as an almost 30-year-old, I think that it missed the mark for me. And that's just unfortunate because I wanted to love it and I didn't love it. I didn't hate it, but I did not love it. Okay, those are all the novels that I read this year. My top 3, I would have to say, is the first 2 Carissa Broadbent books in the War of Lost Hearts series. I'm so excited to read the 3rd one. Like I said, I'm going to make it my first book of the year for 2025. It's already loaded onto my Kobo. I cannot wait to get started. I'm also heartbroken to get started because how dare you do this to me, Carissa? The end of number 2 was so mean. I can't wait to read the rest. The series was definitely number 1. The writing was phenomenal, so beautiful. Every character was so good. Even down to the villains. That's right, villains, multiple villains. There's so many complex and morally gray characters in this series, which I fucking love. Yeah, really, really good, and I'm obsessed. I hope that number 3 lives up to number 1 and 2. Obviously, you and YouTube will probably find out if it was not. My second top book of series of 2024 was the Plated Prisoner series by Raven Kennedy. I was just really impressed with the world building. I was really impressed with every individual reveal, every like big moment. I was obsessed. I love it. Another like badass femme main character, and yeah, a lot of cool, powerful women in this series too, which I very much appreciated. Number 3 is probably Don't Want You Like a Best Friend. I think I mentioned, but the build-up of the romance is just so good. The angst is so good. And then I love a good period piece. If I'm not picking something high fantasy, I really love the reality of the world building. I just thought it was really, really, really fun. And also like a really beautiful queer romance. Made me feel a lot of things. I definitely sobbed reading this book. My least favorite book of the year was probably Carving for Kara, mostly because I didn't know what I was getting into, so this is one of those I blame myself moments. I read the trigger warnings. I knew what was coming, actually, you know? Can't say I knew what was coming about an erotica. And then my biggest disappointment of the year was unfortunately Tress of the Emerald Sea. I wanted to love this book. I really did. All right, last up, I want to talk about a couple of my wrap-up graphs. The first one, I read 96 books that were categorized as adventurous, 78 that were categorized as lighthearted, 53 that were categorized as funny, and 46 that were categorized as emotional. So those were my top like genre descriptors for 2024. In terms of my page number breakdown, I had 64% of my books were under 300 pages. That's something that I'd like to change, but I think it was just because of the sheer amount of manga that I read this year. 21% of my books were 300 to 499 pages, and 15% of my books were over 500 pages. I think that's kind of badass, and I'm really proud of myself, but I would like more of my books to be around 300 or more pages. This year was really, truly the year of the manga, so, you know, there's only so much you can do. And then the last graph that I want to look at is sad and pathetic, but 99% of my reads were fiction and 1% were nonfiction. I definitely have a goal to increase my fiction. No, not the Freudian slip. I definitely have a goal to read more nonfiction this year. I think in 2024, I just kind of wanted to unapologetically read anything and everything that I looked at and went, that looks good. Let's try that. It was a mix of, what are you reading? I want to read what my friends are reading. This year, I think I'm going to read a little bit more just for me. We'll see how that goes. I still like to take recommendations from friends. I have one of my first reads of the year after Carissa Broadbent's Mother of Death and Dawn. I'm going to be reading The Will of the Many, which is a recommendation from my friend Toasty, and the reviews look really good. But I will read things that friends recommend to me, but I think that this year I also have a couple things that I'd just like to read for me. So I'm excited to see where that journey goes. thank you for being here to help me wrap up 2024. I wish everybody a happy new year. And if there's anything that you read in 2024 in any of the topics that I covered, top 3 least favorite, most disappointing when it comes to fiction, nonfiction, manga, I'd love to know. Did we read any of the same books? I would also love to know. And did you disagree with me about any of the books that I mentioned? I would love to know. Feel free to leave a comment, and I hopefully will make more book content in the future and going forward. It's a big goal for me, so hopefully we could do it together. And if you like it, feel free to like the video, give a little sub to the channel, and I will see you next time. Bye.